The holy water was sitting on the kitchen counter when I arrived. Still in the bottle the mother had filled at the parish font 3 weeks earlier. Still sealed. She had meant to bless every room. She told me this at the table, hands folded, voice flat with exhaustion. The children had been sleeping badly. The dog would not go near the hallway. Her husband, a man in his mid-40s, a daily communicant for most of his adult life, had stopped sleeping in their bedroom 6 days before he called me. He did not know why. He said it felt wrong in there. The bottle of holy water had not been opened. It sat on the counter with the breakfast dishes. I have seen this before. Not the infestation, no, I have seen that in dozens of cases across decades of this work. I mean, the bottle, the intention that never became an action, the sacramental bought and shelved, the family that knew the right things and did not do them and left the door ajar, and then one morning realized something had walked through it. My name is Father Chad Ripperger. I am a Thomistic philosopher and a priest trained in the formal rite of exorcism, still operating in that ministry. I did not seek this work. It found me the way most difficult vocations find a man, through the needs of others, through superiors who recognized a capacity, and through the mercy of God, who apparently decided I should spend a portion of my priesthood in rooms that smell of nothing at all, which is often worse than the rooms that smell of something. I come to this case because it is not unusual. That is the point. It is the case I have seen more than almost any other. A family, practicing Catholics. A home without mortal sin on the surface, without obvious occult involvement, without any of the dramatic entry points the movies like to use. And yet the family had been suffering for months before anyone called a priest, and when they did, I found that bottle of holy water still sealed on the counter. Let me tell you what the husband described to me when we sat in that kitchen. He was a methodical man, an engineer by training, not given to imagination or exaggeration. He told me that approximately 3 months before he called, his youngest daughter, 7 years old, had begun waking in the night, not from nightmares. She would be found sitting up in bed, eyes open, not speaking. When they came to her, she did not respond for 2 or 3 minutes, and then she simply lay back down and went to sleep as though nothing had happened. This happened 7 or 8 times across 3 weeks. Then it stopped. Then the dog, a retriever they had kept for 5 years, the gentlest animal, who slept in the hallway outside the children's rooms every night. The dog stopped going past the kitchen doorway. For 400 years, the church provided the laity with specific prayers to address situations in their homes that they could not explain. Most parishes stopped teaching them after 1965. Now, they have all been compiled into a concise, practical guide. Keep it near the door and read the first page tonight. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first pinned comment. Into the back of the house, he would stand at the threshold and whine and turn around. This persisted for 6 weeks. Then the husband began waking at 2 or 3 in the morning with a feeling he could only describe as dread. Not fear of anything specific, dread in itself. He would lie there while his wife slept, and he would feel that the room was occupied by something that was watching him. He moved to the couch. His wife told me she had begun to feel angry, not at anything in particular. She was snapping at the children over small things and then sitting alone afterward, knowing it had been unreasonable, feeling as though something was draining out of her that she could not name. I listened to all of this without interrupting. I have been in enough of these conversations to know that the clinical detail matters. The pattern tells you what you are dealing with. This was an infestation. Aquinas, in the Summa Theologica, treats the modes by which fallen angels may act on the material world in questions 50 through 64 of the first part. He is precise. Fallen angels retain their natural intelligence, which is of a different order than human intelligence. They perceive formal causes, they read patterns in matter, they operate through secondary causation. They do not create. They cannot compel the will. But they can act on the imagination, on the senses, on the material environment. An infestation is the demonic presence operating in a place rather than primarily through a person. The family was not possessed. They were not even obsessed in the technical sense. But the presence in that house was real, and it was acting, and it had been acting for 3 months before they called me. The door. I asked the husband, had anything changed in the house in the period before this began? he thought. His wife spoke before he did. She said her mother had given them a small painting about 4 months ago. Decorative, she thought. It had come from an estate sale. She had hung it in the hallway. She described it to me, and I asked to see it. The painting was not satanic in any obvious sense. It was folk art, the kind of thing that floats through estate sales and antique markets, but it had symbols worked into the background that I recognized. I will not describe them in detail. It was enough. It had been in that hallway for 4 months, hanging across from the door of the youngest daughter's room. I asked when they had last been to confession. The husband, 6 months. The wife, the same. The children had not been to confession since their first confessions the prior year. The family rosary had stopped during Lent when schedules became difficult and had not resumed. There was no image of Our Lady in the house. There was a decorative cross in the living room, bought at a home goods store. It was not a crucifix. It had no corpus. I asked one more question. Had anyone given them anything a gift? A stone, a piece of jewelry, a candle, in the months before this started, from someone whose faith they could not vouch for? The wife hesitated. Her sister had given her a small crystal described as decorative, a feng shui piece around the same time as the painting. She had put it in the master bedroom on the windowsill. She had forgotten about it. When I went to look, it was still there, on the sill above the bed where her husband had stopped sleeping. 2 entry points. That is more than I find in some cases. The point is, neither was obviously sinister on the surface. One was folk art from an estate. One was a decorative stone from a well-meaning family member. Both had come from sources the family could not spiritually account for, and both had arrived in the same season the household began to deteriorate. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote more than a dozen questions on how fallen angels operate. Most Catholics have never read one line of it. This archive gathers that teaching, the 1,614 rite, and 4 centuries of documented cases into a single reference. Read it slowly, 1 chapter a night. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first posted comment. This is the pattern I encounter. Not malice, not apostasy, gradual erosion. The sacramental life compressed by schedule, by fatigue, by a culture that has systematically treated the supernatural as private sentiment rather than ontological reality. And so the walls thin and something notices. The enemy does not need an invitation written in blood. He needs a gap. He is patient. He has been observing this family for years, watching for exactly the kind of slow drift they had allowed the missed confessions, the rosary that stopped, the holy water on the counter still sealed, and when the objects arrived, they gave him a foothold he was already positioned to use. Now let me tell you what we did. Not what you might expect, not a formal major exorcism, because this was not possession and it did not warrant one. What this family needed was what the church has always provided for exactly this situation. The family blessing, the cleansing of the home with properly blessed holy water, the removal of the door the enemy was using, the reestablishment of the sacramental life, and a specific prayer for the protection and cleansing of the family unit. I want to deliver that to you directly, because this is exactly what the title promised, and it is exactly what I gave that family on the evening I came to their house. The first thing I did was remove the painting. This is not dramatic. I am not asking you to tear your walls apart. But if you have brought into your home objects from unknown provenance, particularly from estate sales, flea markets, occult shops, or given by someone whose spiritual condition you do not know, you must examine them soberly and remove what is questionable. Objects can serve as points of attachment. The Roman ritual of 1614 acknowledged this. The Church's tradition of blessing objects is not superstition. It is a recognition that the material and spiritual orders are not separate worlds. The second thing I did was open that bottle of holy water. Properly blessed holy water, not decorative water, the priest waved a hand over between other business. But water blessed with the full traditional blessing, the longer form has real sacramental power. It is not magic, it does not operate by itself, but used with faith, used deliberately, it is an instrument the Church places in your hands for exactly this purpose. I went through that house room by room, every doorway, every threshold, every window, the corners, the basement, the garage, the children's rooms. I prayed the asperges as I went. Then I placed a blessed crucifix, a real one, with a corpus above the front door. I placed an image of Our Lady in the main hallway where the painting had been, not as decoration, as a statement of who governs this house. Then we prayed together, that family and I want to give you the prayer we used. Say it tonight if you are struggling. Say it as a family gathered, kneeling if you can. Lord Jesus Christ, by your authority over every power and dominion, I ask you to cleanse this home and every member of this family. We renounce any attachment, any object, any agreement, any invitation, deliberate or unknowing, that has given the enemy a foothold here. We break it now in your name. We invoke the protection of the Most Blessed Virgin Mary, our Mother, Queen of Angels, who crushes the head of the serpent. We ask Saint Michael, the Archangel, and the holy angels assigned to this family to drive from this house every unclean spirit and to seal every threshold against their return. Lord, restore what has been taken. Restore peace to these children, rest to this home, clarity to these minds. We consecrate this family to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This home belongs to you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I want to be direct about what I am doing and what I am not doing. I am a priest with years of formation in this ministry, and I am telling you what the church teaches and what I have observed in the cases I have handled. I am not providing a guarantee, and I am not telling you this replaces priestly ministry or sacramental life. I am telling you this is real, what the church provides is real, and what you do with it is between you and God. Not every disturbed household has a demonic cause. Some of what I have described has natural explanations, but the remedies I am describing, confession, the Eucharist, properly blessed sacramentals, the rosary, the enthronement of the Sacred Heart, these are not harmful in any case and are necessary in all cases. What the Eucharist is specifically is the real presence of Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Most Holy Sacrament of the altar. This is not a symbol. It is not a memorial in the Protestant sense. The Council of Trent defined this in 1551, and it has been the consistent teaching of the Church from the Apostles forward. John 6:55, my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink. The demonic cannot tolerate this presence. In the cases I have handled, when a family restores worthy reception of the Eucharist as a consistent practice, the spiritual environment of the home shifts. The legal ground the enemy held, and it is, in a real sense, legal ground, operating within what God permits based on the state of the soul, begins to collapse. Confession is the mechanism by which that legal ground is formally revoked. John 23, whose sins you shall forgive, they are forgiven. The sacrament of penance is not therapeutic, it is juridical. The absolution of a validly ordained priest acting in persona Christi breaks the hold that mortal sin provides. I have seen infestations resolve almost entirely after the family went to confession together and received the Eucharist worthily the following Sunday. Not because confession is magic, but because they removed the conditions that had allowed the presence to persist. The rosary is not a devotional option. It is a weapon. Our Lady of Fatima said it in 1917, the Curé d'Ars saint. John Vianney, who died 4 August 1859, was physically attacked by what he called le grappin, the claw, throughout his ministry. He reported that the attacks intensified during periods of intense prayer and mortification, and that they diminished when his parishioners prayed the rosary in number. Padre Pio, who received the stigmata 20 September 1918, described his own encounters with the demonic, with characteristic directness and without theater. Both men prayed the rosary every day. Both men understood it as something the enemy fears. The enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the formal consecration of the home and family to the heart of Christ, with the image enthroned, is a specific act of governance. It declares publicly, spiritually, and in the order of divine law who this family belongs to. It was recommended by Pope Leo XIII and has been practiced in Catholic homes since the late 19th century. I recommend it without reservation. If you have never done it, do it this week. The brown scapular deserves mention here as well. Our Lady of Mount Carmel appeared to St. Simon's Stock in 1251 with the promise attached to it. It is worn on the body. It is a sacramental that touches the person every waking and sleeping hour. In my experience, families where the parents and children wear the scapular consistently show a different spiritual signature than those that do not. I am not attributing magic to cloth. I am noting that a sacramental worn with faith and understanding and kept in the state of grace is a persistent spiritual act. It is the difference between a door briefly closed and a door that is locked. That evening, after the objects were removed, after the holy water had gone through every room, after the crucifix and the image of Our Lady were placed, after the family prayed together, the husband told me the bedroom felt different. He slept there that night. His wife told me the following week by telephone that the dog had gone back into the hallway. The daughter slept through the night, 3 nights in a row. These are not proofs. God does not give us proofs on demand. But they are the pattern I see when the family does what the church has always taught, and they are the pattern that is absent when the family does not. I want to tell you why this family was vulnerable, not to condemn them, to describe a pattern that is now the norm rather than the exception. Since the close of the Second Vatican Council in 1965, there has been a systematic collapse in the transmission of authentic Catholic belief and practice in the West. This is documented and not disputed by honest observers within the Church. A survey conducted in 2019 by the Pew Research Center found that only 31% of self-identified American Catholics believe in the real presence as the Church defines it. 31%. The rest believe a symbol, a memory, a spiritual idea. This is not a minor theological disagreement. The Church has always taught that denial of the real presence is materially heretical. What it means practically is that 69% of American Catholics are walking past the greatest armor available to the human soul and treating it as a gesture. Confession has been similarly abandoned. The lines at confessionals that once stretched through the parishes of the immigrant church, Polish, Irish, Italian, German parishes, where the faithful understood that mortal sin was not a therapeutic category, but a rupture with God requiring juridical repair. Those lines no longer exist in most parishes. The result is generations of Catholics living in states that provide legal ground for the demonic to operate, not because they are evil, but because they were never formed to understand what they were defending against. The 1999 rite of exorcism, the revised Roman ritual, requires a bishop's permission before a formal major exorcism can be performed and defines a longer process of discernment before it can proceed. I understand why those provisions exist. I also know from direct experience that they have created practical barriers that leave suffering people without timely access to the Church's ministry. The 1614 rite was not reckless, it was direct. There is a reason the older forms have never been formally abrogated. The assault on the family is the final piece. California enacted no-fault divorce in 1969. The rest of the states followed. The result has been the atomization of the domestic church, the family unit, which is the primary location of the transmission of faith and the primary site of supernatural protection for children. A stable, sacramentally married couple, practicing, praying together, confessing regularly, is one of the most resistant spiritual environments that exists. That environment has been legislated, counseled, and culturally mocked out of existence across 50 years. I say all of this not to despair. I say it to name what is happening with precision, because the enemy profits from confusion about his methods. I am telling you what I observed. I am telling you what the Church provides. I am inviting you to examine your own home and your own life with the same sobriety I bring to the cases that come before me. I do not know what God permits in every household or every life. I know what I have seen, and I know what the Church teaches, and those two things have held together in my experience across decades of this work with a consistency I cannot attribute to coincidence. What you do with that is your decision before God. Here is what to do this week. Go to confession, not next month, this week. Find a priest in the state of grace who has been ordained in the valid line and make an integral confession, all mortal sins, kind and number, to the best of your knowledge. If you do not know where to find one, look for a parish that celebrates the traditional Latin Mass. That is not a guarantee of sanctity, but it is a reasonable heuristic for sacramental seriousness. Receive the Eucharist worthily at Mass after that confession. Approach the Lord in the most holy sacrament with the understanding that you are receiving the same body that walked out of the tomb on the third day, not a symbol, Him. Go to a traditional parish and ask for holy water, properly blessed holy water. Take it home. Go through every room, every doorway, every threshold with deliberate intent, praying as you go. Bless your children with it. Bless yourself. Place a blessed crucifix above the front door of your home. Place an image of Our Lady in a prominent place. These are not decorations. They are statements of sovereignty. Remove from your home anything from an unknown source that carries occult symbols, imagery associated with false religions in a devotional sense, or objects given by those whose spiritual state is openly opposed to God. I am not asking you to be paranoid. I am asking you to be sober. Consecrate your family to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. There are prayers and ceremonies available for this. Do it formally, together, with intent. Pray one rosary each day, all 4 mysteries across the week if you can. The family rosary is not a nostalgic practice from the immigrant church. It is a deployment of the greatest sacramental prayer the church possesses, given by Our Lady herself at Fatima in 1917, and confirmed by every serious spiritual authority in the centuries preceding and following. Find a sound priest for spiritual direction, not a counselor, not a life coach, not a therapeutic confessor who tells you that God accepts you as you are without amendment of life. A priest who will tell you the truth, give you penances, hold you to the faith you professed at baptism. Form your children, catechize them yourself if the parish is not doing it properly, which in most cases it is not. The faith is transmitted through the home before it is transmitted through any institution. The church has survived worse than this. Athanasius stood against a world that called him a heretic and held the Orthodox faith alone, and the world became Orthodox again and called him Athanasius contra mundum, Athanasius against the world. The French Revolution martyred the Carmelites of Compiègne on 17 July 1794, and they sang the Veni Creator Spiritus as they mounted the scaffold, and their blood fed a church that outlasted Napoleon and the republic that followed. The faithful of China worshipped in homes with no priest for decades under the most hostile government the modern world produced, and they held. This church does not survive by triumphalism. It survives by saints who do the ordinary things with extraordinary fidelity. God is with us. He has always been with us. The question is whether we will be with Him. Next, I want to examine what happens when the entry point is not an object but a person, when the source of an infestation is someone within the family who has made agreements, knowingly or not, that opened a channel the rest of the household is suffering through. That case is more common than most families want to believe, and the path out of it is specific. We will go there next.